All right. Hey, you guys. Trying to go live with Bro Daniel. We was having technical difficulties before. Not sure what's going on. But we're going to get Bro Daniel in here. You. Come on. Let it work this time. Come on. Go live. Yes.
There you go. I tried both.
Yes.
Phones. I'm like, what's going on here?
I don't know what was happening, but
All right, there
I gotta tell everybody all the puns that was intended. I got my Walking Dead shirt on today. I had to dress comfortable since we were talking about survival. I'm so excited.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. And this is Bro Daniel, y'all. You guys can follow him at Daniel_KC1NCF. Did I say it right? Oh, no, don't pause up on me. Did I say it right? Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, I can hear you.
We good. So yes, I was telling everybody beforehand what Droppin' Gems was and how Droppin' Gems is intended for children, teachers, parents, and small business owners. And we focus on these key gems: parent education, teacher training, small business development, and raising the standards and values within our communities. So with that being said, I want to let y'all know why I wanted Bro Daniel on here, and then I want you to tell them a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I was watching one of his lives one day. It was actually supposed to be an unboxing of a radio, right? And then I was intrigued by what he was talking about, so I just started asking questions. And I just kept asking questions. He was supposed to get off the live, y'all. He was supposed to get off. I was asking questions because it reminded me of some of the things that we have to prepare for at work. And as he was talking, this is something that he teaches to people, in general, just men, women, everybody who wants to know anything about preparedness in emergency situations, survival preparedness. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes, ma'am. There's a million ways to say it. It's all the same.
Yes. So he was talking about that. And I was like, man, that's interesting. Like, even me being at work, like, I understand this as a work concept. Like, we got to keep the children safe. We got to be prepared. But I don't never bring none of those thought processes. I don't never bring them home with me. And so I was like, oh man, maybe you need to talk to the people. Let's get him to talk and talk about these go bags, because at every child care center we have to have one for emergency situations. But I never thought to have one in case of emergency situation at home. And so I wanted to bring you on. I thought everything that you're teaching is dope, and it's needed. It makes you think. I looked at a lot of your stuff. I ain't gonna talk about some of the. I might talk about it a little bit later because I need you to know some of these little jokes I got hidden away. But it's a good stuff. It's a good stuff, y'all. So I want y'all to pay attention and listen to the things he's gonna be talking about. But go ahead, introduce yourself.
Peace, family. My name is Brother Daniel, KC1NCF. I am lead instructor at Radio Communications and Survival Preparedness. I teach, a lot of people get it mixed up and think it's all about radios. Radio is a huge component of it because communication is key. It's key in everyday life between you, your spouse, your children, your place of employment, your employees, whatever your situation is. Communication is key. So we do put a special focus on communication, but I try to cover the broad spectrum of survival and preparedness. So that's what I teach. I'm also a follower and student of the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan in the Nation of Islam. So people always also refer to me as Brother Daniel 4X. And so, right now, my main focus is, like you said, getting this information out to our people and out to people in general, because the reality is we are living in extremely uncertain times, right? That's one of the, most nicest ways you can put it that encompasses everybody, right? Is that we're living in uncertain times. People are very uncertain, whether it's about, their employment, whether it's about where their next meal is going to come from, the status of a loved one who may be dealing with COVID in these hospitals. There's so many different questions in the minds of the general population, and questions, not simple questions, complicated questions a lot of times, that there aren't clear answers to. The mindset that I try to approach it with is that whenever there's a question mark, right, and you're seeking for an answer, there's nothing you can really do until the answer comes or you find the answer, right? But the most you can do, or the least you can do really, is to prepare yourself for those things that you know are possible, right? And how do we know it's possible? Precedents. People have been suffering from all kind of ailments, situations, and circumstances, be it natural disaster, be it political uprising, be it social disenfranchisement, whatever the situation and circumstance is, there are situations that we can pull from and say, well, this is something that historically happens in this type of climate, that type of climate, and we can prepare around those things. So those are the kind of things I try to put people's mind towards. Look at what's happened in the past. Look at the conditions and things people have suffered from because of a lack of knowledge. And then I try to bring them that knowledge on what you can do to best optimize your situation and circumstances to overcome as many obstacles that may be in your path.
Don't y'all just love it?
Praise
Yes, and he does. That's why I got my Walking Dead shirt on, y'all, because one of we just being honest, right, when all of this stuff happened, we had all the jokes and all the things about COVID with the apocalypse, right? We're living in apocalyptic times, right? And if you just think about some of the things, I've looked at some of your videos, even when you were talking about preparing for the canning with Colette and the food stuff, food preparation, some of that stuff. I was just like, dang, that is happening. Y'all gonna have to go to his page to find out what I'm talking about. But it is happening. And I was like, oh man, you don't necessarily think like that, because we take these moments for granted and it just comes. So how do we prepare? And so I wanted to talk about, we're just gonna touch on go bags for you guys today, because it's a lot that he could touch on. And if you want more information, you're gonna have to go to his page, check him out, and he even gives classes on these, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So you can learn more. It's so much that this brother could teach you, and I'm so excited. And so I want to talk about my correlation for this. So I work in early childhood education, and we have to prepare for any emergency situations with the children, right? We got to have fire drills, sometimes cold blue drills, and that's when if somebody was to come and shoot up the school, we would hope that someone would never come into a child care center and try to air the place out. But it's a lot of crazies in this world, so we have to prepare for stuff like that. Tornado drills. I'm sure if I lived in somewhere like Cali, we would have to have earthquake drills and things of that nature.
Fire drills, yeah.
Yeah. So in this one particular live he was doing for free, he was talking about go bag. Some way, somehow the conversation got about go bags. So I was like, oh, we got those at work. Like, we have to have a bag in case of emergencies. It has to have the first aid kit, the food, the water, the gloves. If for our children, we have to have, if there's like someone who has a special need, an allergy or something, that medicine, we have to make sure that is put into the bag. We got to have clipboards. We got to have our forms of communication. Each teacher or everybody in childcare I don't know what job nobody got their cell phone on them, but everybody got their cell phone on them now. And then gloves. And then even for us, because we're working with children, we have to put in things like a toy, you know, that would comfort them.
Portable distractions.
Mm-hmm. Or in extra clothes. And some, depending on state to state, depending on what state you live in, they'll even go the extra mile to where parents will have to bring something for that child that we will have to put into the go bag for emergency situations. And then we have to have all of these plan of evacuations, and we have to know where we're going to go, who we're going to contact, all type of stuff. And so when you were talking and you were putting it to, when you were talking, you were relating it to just your home, your family, you, the individual, being prepared for these situations. And I was like, I never thought about that. Why don't I have a go bag at home? Why not? I mean, I looked at one of your lives and you was unpacking an what's the thing? A fire escape thing. I didn't even know they made those, right?
Yes,
I was like, oh snap, they make these things. But if I lived in an apartment,
I'm surprised with the name.
Yeah, like if I lived in an apartment, I might think about having one of those on hand. And then me and you even had conversations going a little deeper that you have to prepare differently if you have a family or if you're single. It's a lot of things that goes into this. So I wanted to just kind of ask you a couple of questions, if you don't mind, where we can touch on these certain situations. So me being a single female, right? I'm living in a home and I just got roommates. I don't have no kids or anything like that. What type of go bag would you suggest I have on deck? Now, let me tell you what type of area I live in, because I know that's important too. So my area is a place where we have tornadoes sometimes and floods often. But if I was back at home in Chicago, we have blizzards and thunderstorms. So go.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me on. I appreciate you, your time, attention, and your audience. Thank you, everybody who's attending. Please share this out. Now, there's two things I want to address before I answer that question, if I can. One, because you mentioned it, hopefully, you know, someone wouldn't think about coming up in a child care center and basically doing harm. I like to keep things real because sometimes you have to shock people back into the reality of the world we live in. And the reality is it has happened. Sandy Hook is not that far from Boston. And that was a tragic situation where someone did go into a child care facility and took the lives of many children. So it's not far-fetched. And you put yourself in an awesome position to steward over the lives of those young people who aren't going to be necessarily capable of preparing for themselves and knowing what to do in a survival situation. So your mindset and the way you prepare isn't just for you. It's actually for those children as well. It's so important. So I wanted to touch on that. Also, just before we get into that too, what is a go bag, right? A go bag is it's a bag, right? Like it says, a bag. It really depends on the individual, the type of bag that they want, the type of bag they feel comfortable with carrying or whatever works for them. But generally it's a bag that you will have in it all the things that you feel you need if you were to be displaced by situations, circumstances that are out of your control, i.e., again, natural disaster, something like you say you live in a hurricane-prone environment or tornado-prone environment, floods and stuff like that. If you feel like in your area is a strong potential that you would be displaced by a tornado, flood, or whatever, you have to have something that you feel, okay, if I had to pick up and leave right now, what do I have to have with me in order for me to sustain my life from point A to point B, which is going to be from my physical home or wherever I'm at when the unfortunate event happens to a place that I have predetermined. Like you said, there's always a plan for, you have to know where you're going to go. So your predetermined locations, meaning, okay, there's a place within the city that you should have, and you know that if I don't have to leave the state, there's somewhere in the city that I know I can go. I have access to that place. And then you should also have something in your plan outside of your city, because some catastrophes are even bigger. So don't just think everything's local. Some things you may be displaced a couple blocks if it's a fire. Maybe you can go to a cousin's house down the street. But if it's a flood, hurricane, tornado, it's going to affect a much bigger environment. You might need somewhere outside of your city or outside of your state. And so that bag has to accommodate you from the origin of the disaster to wherever your safe zone is at. And so, again, it's a case-by-case basis. So you gave a scenario. You're living with roommates. You don't have children. You might be single, right? You said it's a flood environment, a hurricane, a tornado. So when you're talking about floods, one of the things you got to be familiar with is where's the high ground in your area, right? You're talking about dealing with water. So in your go bag, you're going to want something that that might be able to help you if you were to get caught in, a rip current of water, coming into your city. So maybe a life jacket, something that can deflate down to a small size that you can put inside of your bag. Also, you want to consider having lighter material clothes because the clothing has potential to get wet, or you want some kind of material that doesn't absorb water, something that is either water resistant or waterproof so that it doesn't take on water. You want some type of boots or shoes that also will not take on too much water, or if they did, you'd be able to move in them because they do make shoes that you can wear in the water. You want to make sure that you have with you flashlight. You want to make sure you have a first aid. I say first aid / trauma kit. They're not the same thing, but you could upgrade one to fit all of them. It's really up to you. And again, what you think you might need. Also, in that kind of situation, so you say you live in a place with friends. So if you own a home, you would want to have, like, for instance, some people have canoes. I don't know if y'all remember when Katrina happened, they showed people, and not just Katrina, all kind of places where things are flooded. People, literally on the news going down the street in a canoe. If you live in that kind of environment and you can have one, hey, why not? So it really depends on your situation and circumstances. Now you're talking about a tornado. You're talking about something slightly different. You have to expect that with a tornado there might be power outages. So, power lines knocked down, cell phone towers knocked down, or something like that, transformers destroyed. So communication might not be the best, or a phone might not be the only option you want to have in that situation because phones require that grid. So that's when you want to get into your radio communication, something that's not dependent on that grid. So if the power lines go down, if the transformers, the cell phone towers, these radios aren't tied to, they can be, but they're not reliant on that. So a radio like this or like this one would allow you to keep communication in the event that the cell phone towers are down. Also, a hurricane or a tornado environment is an above ground event. You might want to know. So real quick before that, a map. I have a map here. So this is a street map. It's a full blown, like it's small, but if I open this up, it's like it's a full blown map. If I go open that whole thing up, I'm gonna keep it in accordion mode.
I'm gonna say now I'm horrible with maps. So what's the alternative with somebody who's horrible with maps like me?
There are alternatives. So first, the map. Why I say map? Because you need to know at the places in your city that might have a low ground shelter. Okay. You're under the high ground, of course, flood situation type, something like that. But you need to know if there's some kind of, if it's a tornado-prone environment or hurricane-prone environment, likely there are people, maybe not everyone, but there are people in that environment who are familiar with that reality and have storm shelters and stuff like that. You should see if you can figure out what some of those are and have that stuff on a map. Why I say a map, specifically a written one, because you can write on it, you can mark things on it, right? And what I teach is that when you get into what I call high stress situation, any situation that is going to elevate your adrenaline, that's going to get you and your mind going 1,000 miles a minute, and it's harder for you to, focus in because things are happening around you. It's sometimes hard to recall things. So you might have a plan in your mind, but you always need something on paper that you can refer to just in case, because you're in a heightened sense of urgency. You don't want to have to be, oh, what was that? You want to be able to pull out a map or a pen and a pad, which is something else you should have in your go bag that has the address, the location, and all that kind of stuff on it. Now, alternatives to a paper map would be your phone. It doesn't even have to be an active phone. Like I said, you're right about the grid as far as making a communication, but apps like Google Maps allow you to download certain size maps offline. So maybe you might want to go and tag some stuff on your Google Maps and then download that version onto your phone so that in case something happens, you are able to access it without the paper. I say have both. Really, that to be honest with you should have both. Now the thing with the phone is phones also die. So if you're going to rely on the phone solely, then that means you need an external power source, either a battery pack or some other type of device that you can use to power your phone, or you have to conserve your phone's power, consciously in order to make sure that you can have it at your disposal as long as you're going to need it for the duration of that time. And with a go bag where you teach that you should have one that is going to last you a minimum of 3 days. So there are ways that you can conserve your phone battery or the battery to your radio for a minimum of 3 days. They have functions on your phone where you can turn off most of the operability so that the battery will last longer. Also, just not using it, for just any old thing. But a phone is a good device to have for that as well. Now, what else?
I want to go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Continue on. I want to go back to when you were saying that a first aid kit or a trauma kit. And for those who don't know what a trauma kit is, can you explain that a little bit?
So there's 3 types of kits that you might hear mentioned from various people in survival preparedness emergency, world. You might hear E-kit, which is an emergency kit. You might hear first aid kit, which is exactly what you said. It's first aid. That's the first line of aid that you might give. Something small. It's not a huge event where someone's in danger of losing their life. And then a trauma kit is something that you have in case of a traumatic event where someone is either potentially going to bleed out, has lost consciousness, has been immobilized due to something like a broken leg or arm. They've sustained some type of serious injury that impedes them from being able to move forward or go beyond a certain point. It immobilizes them. It puts them in danger of losing their life. So a trauma kit, also an E-kit, doesn't have to have first aid stuff in it. An E-kit could have your flashlight, it could have a compass, it could have a radio, and for some people that's the emergency kit, right? That's really up to the individual's discretion. A first aid kit is typically always going to have Band-Aids, maybe an aspirin or 2, some gauze pads of very smaller sizes, ointments for burns. It might have a little splint for your finger. I've seen in some. There's like small things to treat small wounds when you come in contact with poisonous plants for itching and burns. Trauma kit might have something like a suture, something for you to actually sew up a wound that has to be closed or the person will bleed out. It might have what they call blood stoppers. They come in various forms, but they're designed to coagulate or clot blood. So if someone was shot or stabbed and bleeding profusely, there's some that you can rip it and you can pour the powder in and it will cause the blood to congeal, which would stop the flow of the blood. And then there are also pads that you can put up against the wound that will do the same exact thing. A trauma kit might also include a tourniquet, which is for cutting off the circulation of blood to a certain limb in case, God forbid, a hand, a finger, a leg, or something like that is cut, a severe laceration. You would put the tourniquet at least 4 inches above the wound if that much space is available, and you would turn it until you cut off the circulation. A trauma kit might include, I have these pneumonia inhalants, which are made to help you to wake somebody up in the event that they're knocked out. And say someone gets knocked out or something like that in a flood situation and the water's rising, and you can't carry that person. You need that person to get up. So those ammonia inhalant tablets are something to shock them back into consciousness. It's possible. There are situations people lose consciousness where that won't work. But if it's something like just got knocked out and it's not like a serious like brain injury, that should be able to bring them back to consciousness. So those are kind of things that you might look for in a trauma kit.
Okay. Thank you for that. I was also thinking of we have to have and I always mess up the name. I think AD, can't remember the initial, but it's the one of the EKG things where you shock them.
Oh, AED.
ADD.
Automatic external defibrillator.
Yeah. So we have to sometimes have that on hand in the
right.
shower.
It's important. That's very important.
That's the case. Okay. So situations are different for people who have families and need to flee. in emergency situations. Can you talk on that a little bit?
Yes. Real quick, family, do me a favor. If you have any questions, there should be a question box below. You can put your questions in that box and maybe we can get to them later. So different situations and circumstances call for different levels of preparedness. Everybody's situation circumstance is different. What do I mean? You could have two people living in the same building, in the same, well, obviously it's gonna be in the same city, right? But one may be male, living by himself, you know, and he might say between the ages of 20 and 30. The other one may be a mother with a small child. You know, another person might be living in that building, 60-something-year-old male, female. You might have another person living in there with 4 children, right? Mother and father. All 4 of those situations are different, completely different. You know, someone, you know, one might be living on the 1st floor while the other one is living on the 3rd floor. Another one's living on the 5th floor, you know, whatever have you. That even makes a difference. So you want to specifically about, you know, having children, right?
Yes, those who have children and they're
Versus,
yes, in
right.
an emergency situation or something pops up.
So generally, when you are teaching survival preparedness, right, you want to prepare people according to their specific situation, circumstances. So you always go and ask them questions. So, you know, what is your home dynamic? You know, how many people are in the home? Is it just you? Are the children there? Is it just you and your wife, or your spouse, significant other? Is it you might be living with an elderly parent that you're taking care of, right? Now, in an event where if someone says that there are children in the home, how you approach that is completely different. Why? For instance, if I was to be talking to a young man or a young woman who's single living by themselves, one of the things that I might advise them to do is to put various types of physical material, I'll call it, around the house that they could use to defend themselves with, right? Because I don't encourage weapons necessarily, but that's what people know, right? And
It's up like
how
Home
you go,
Alone almost, right?
right? So how you go about, you know, storing a weapon in your home. It's
Yeah.
going to change if there are children there. Because if I'm living by myself and I don't believe the way I believe, or I don't carry weapons, I don't keep them in my house, you know, I might have a pistol stashed underneath of the couch. I have one at the table. I'm going to have one behind my mini bar. I'm going to have one in the bathroom with me. So no matter where I am in my house, guess what? If someone was to come in, because you don't know, this is the thing too. You don't know when and how, from where, and by whom disaster will strike. You know, preparedness isn't always about natural disasters, home invasion. You
Yeah.
know, an emergency, someone has to go to the hospital real quick. But the reality is you don't know when and where. So you have to have things in place all around your house in order to protect yourself. But in a situation you have a child, you're not going to do that, right? So when you have children, the first thing, and this goes back to the Sandy Hook thing, you have to know your own child, the age of the child. You have to have real conversations with them. That's number one. Before you even, now you're going to do what you got to do ahead of time, but before you start pulling your child into their preparedness plan, your preparedness plans, you have to wake them up to the reality of the world they live in. Because you can't.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I was
I
going
was
to say,
saying, can I touch on that for a second with the
yeah, go
children
ahead.
and helping waking them up and having these conversations? There's a lot of things and tools that teachers or skill sets that teachers have to keep that in place, to keep a calm environment, or to, you know, keep the child calm. Because if you got to hide from somebody who coming in, like you said, invading the household with a gun or something, you don't want to make noises. So there's
Right.
always little things that you could do with your child that you do on a regular basis in the form of a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would help you be prepared in those emergency situations. Like, for instance, playing quiet mouse. Okay, no
Mm-hmm.
talking. We're going to play quiet mouse. We got to be quiet. We're going to hide together. You know,
Right.
that way you're able to keep some control of the situation while you are maneuvering through the situation. And I
Exactly.
want to share that because what you said was very important on how you prepare for that on your everyday basis, because a lot of parents don't understand that even through play, this is what I mean through play, you're teaching. And I know
Right.
y'all see the movies out there where I can't, don't give me the names of the movies, but I'm going to give you scenarios where they be like, let's play our game, or we're going to play hide and seek. and they got I think it was like a NCIS or one of these, and the dad had an emergency situation at the house, and he told the baby, because the person was after the child to get at him, he said,
Right.
let's play hide and seek real quick. I want you to go hide while I play, and hide in our special spot. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that child was able to hide, and that person wasn't able to get to them, and he
Right.
was able to control the situation. So what he said is very important. I want all parents to keep that in mind when you are talking to your child or your children about emergency situations, or these moments, and even when you're playing games with them, there's always a way to take control of the situation. It's even a scary movie that I want everybody to go look at on Hulu. It's fiction, but it was with Lupita Nyong'o, and she was a teacher, and they was on a field trip, and all hell broke loose. Everybody turned into a zombie, right? And she had to keep those children safe. Oh man, I just love that movie. I was like, dang, she must have really put her in a child care center, because she had to stay calm, and everything she did in that movie to get those children to do the things that she wanted to do was through a game. So I want y'all to understand that.
I'm gonna go watch that.
Hear that. Yeah.
Thank you. No, you're right on point with that. That's exactly right. And so what I was gonna say is that, again, depending on the age of your child, and you have to know your child and their mental and emotional state at various times. You have to introduce your child to the reality that the world isn't all candy and cake, right?
Yeah.
And one of the ways you can do that, again, depending on the age and all that, is you can do it through movies. You have to be careful with it, knowing your child, and introduce them to concepts. And then you can also introduce them to real life events. Like I showed my son, he's 7 years old. I've showed him videos of horrific incidents that have happened with children. Whether it was a regular disaster situation that no one could have prepared for, or if it was something that actually had to do with somebody intentionally doing harm to a child, so that he doesn't have the image in his mind that I'm a child, I'm safe because no one hurts children. Now he wasn't traumatized by that. But I was able to explain it to him. He's been homeschooled his entire life, so he's not. We pretty much control his exposure, and so we know his emotional level and state at all times. We're able to shape and mold him a little bit better than some parents might be able to. So he's prepared for certain things, mentally and emotionally at least. You never know how a person's going to act until they get into a situation. So once you start introducing your child to different concepts and ideas and understandings that the world isn't all peaches and cream, right?
Right.
Then you start to debrief them on their thinking of the world. What do you think about this? And how they process information, it should be how you teach them information, right? They'll tell you how and why they understand things. And when you understand how they internalize things, it makes it easier for you to impart knowledge from that point on. And once you start to do that, that's when you start, like you say, you start playing games, and you'll say, oh, in this situation, well, remember what happened with that Sandy Hook situation? Imagine if someone was doing that over here. What would you do? And see where their mind is at. Always give them the option to answer the question before you answer it for them. Let them work the issues out on their own. Because you want them to think that if my mom or father wasn't here, you want them to have the mindset that I could think through it. What happens if something happens and you get knocked out? Now, your child has to be able to think through it. If they're always looking for you to answer the question, then maybe you're not home and something happens and they're thinking about, no, you have to, one of the first things to do is teach your child to think for themselves in an emergency situation.
And I cannot stress that enough. You cannot do everything for your child, and it's very important for you to give them those opportunities to learn. That's a learning opportunity. That's a learning moment. And I can't stress that enough. So you're definitely on point. You on point with everything you're saying. But yeah, when you talk about these children, you know how I get, because it's these babies. Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And so you start playing games and giving them scenarios in which you allow them to navigate. And then when they make slight errors or they give us something that doesn't quite work, you let them know that's awesome. I like that plan, but you know something I think would work better. You never shoot it down. That one, you don't shoot it down. That's good. That's awesome. I'm glad you came up with that. That was so inspiring. But this is something you could change, and then give them the the fix or whatever, and have them react like, oh yeah, because you like I said, it's like a game. They have to feel like they're coming up with the plan, right? This is what I'm saying is key. And once you get their mind acclimated to, okay, I'm capable of answering questions, I'm capable of moving, I know how to do this, I know how to do that, then you start going into the more advanced stuff where you start setting up things like a panic room, or that hideout spot, right? And this is where we get into stuff like that fire ladder. It's one of the things I talked about when I did that live. You want to have in a home where you have children, it could be first, if it's a first floor, it might be slightly different than second, third, fourth story floor. Some people live in apartment buildings. Some people live in the projects, high rises, right? So everything is real. You need to have a room or space in your home, a designated spot that is considered your panic room, fallout room, whatever word terminology you want to put on it that they're familiar with. And you have to have what I call a net. Y'all pardon them silence. I live directly in the middle of the hood family, so I've survived through a lot.
It's all good.
So there's a language. So real quick, I teach again radio communication survival preparedness, and I teach on a concept called a net specific language. Now that language is something that only the people within your family network would be familiar with. There has to be ways for you to communicate with your child verbally, non-verbally, through signs, symbols, cues, and all kind of things. Body language. Your child should know your mannerisms on a daily basis, and depending on those mannerisms, you intentionally pick something out that you don't typically do. I never ever wear my hat backwards, right? That's not true. But say that's the case. Dad never wears that backwards. If I'm walking with my child and I do like this, he'll know, oh, something's about to go down. Let me get to the nearest store. Let me get back to the house. Whatever the situation calls for, they'll know. If you ever see me turn my hat around backwards, I need you to get to the nearest store, take out your phone or whatever, dial 911, and give them your location. Or get back home, call your grandmother. There has to be something that they know what to do in that situation. So in the home, it has to be a cue. Party time, you can just scream out party time. So I don't know, who knows, right? And your child knows automatically to do what? Go to that room. Close the door behind me. Now that room should have certain things in it, kind of like a go bag. You should have food and water in that room at all times. That is not to be touched. It stays there just in case you have to be locked in that room. Right now, food and water can be rotated so the stuff doesn't get old and stale, but you always replace it before you remove things. So if there's a case of water in there, you bring a new case in before you take the old case out, right? That's a little more detail, right? So you want to have food and water. You want to have a first aid / trauma kit in that room. You want to have a fire escape ladder. Why? This is because in an event something happens, you might tell your child, okay, stay in this room. If you don't hear me come for you in 5, 10, 15 minutes or whatever, I need you to put that fire escape ladder out the window, climb out the window, and they should understand maps and directions. I need you to go to Mrs. So-and-so house. They should know Mrs. So-and-so house is, you should be asking, where's Mrs. So-and-so's house? 5 blocks up to the west on this street, on Erie Street. 2 blocks to the left, 1 block to the right, 3 blocks up, 2 blocks down. That's where Miss Anderson lives, right? Your children should know that already. In that room, there should be a flashlight. There should be a communications device, whether it's a cell phone or radio. There should be all kind of what we call a portable distraction, something for them to entertain themselves while things are going to possibly take their mind off of what might be happening. Because you're always not going to always announce the threat. They might be aware of the threat. Say there's a loud crash, and you say something, and they heard the crash, obviously, so they know you're sending them to that room for that reason. Or it could be a situation where you notice something, someone's creeping through the window, and they don't see that, you send them to that room. In that situation, they don't know what's going on, right? So depending on how that comes about even makes a difference. But that's the next thing you want to do is establish a panic room in case something happens. You want to give them go ahead. Yep.
I was going to add to this because I have a cousin who's a police officer, and a lot of stuff that you're saying reminds me of what police officers tend to have to teach their children. Or we see this in a lot of movies like Peyton or whatever, anything with Liam Neeson in it. I don't know. he got a kick butt or whatever. You know what I'm saying? They use feeding mechanisms, and I think that he tends to see this every day. Just like I said, even at work, I'm doing this every day, but I never think about doing it at home because it's not in my profession. I think we need to move away from that. We need to start thinking like this more often. So I want y'all to understand and notice, like, this stuff in movies, like, it's real. Like, this not falling out the sky. It's some truth to everything that we watching. Like, even The Walking Dead, you know, or anything like that. So I want y'all to realize that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So no, she's right. You know, when we see things in movies, understand, you know, now there are those people they call copycats, and, you know, they'll do something seen in a movie. But the reality is that person's seen it for the first time in a movie. Most of the time, these writers in Hollywood are writing movies based off of real life events and things that have happened historically or even in current times.
And then it's going to happen in the future.
Right. Or even if it has never happened, the fact that someone sat down and contemplated that kind of scenario means it exists in other people's minds, and someone might play that out in real life. So, you know, again, you have to be able to separate fiction and fantasy from reality. But the reality is, like she said, The Walking Dead. If you can erase the zombie part, a lot of what they portray in that show gives you a clear understanding of how people would actually behave in a post-collapse world, I'll call it. Never been a zombie ever, but post-collapse world, what is that? You know, that's some kind of fairy tales. No, look at third world countries. You look at a third world country and you see what? Buildings strewn, all kind of, you know, they literally show you photos of buildings with rocks all over the place. That means that was once a developed area. There were roads there. So if you can just rewind, like this movie, rewind the tape, and you see the buildings being rebuilt, that was once like we have here. Don't think that it can't happen. There are people living in areas that look like crap that once looked like your neighborhood. And
Detroit, example.
Exactly. So the reality is that we don't know the day, we don't know the time, right? So back to the preparedness for the home. You're going to establish that panic room, right? And it's going to have all those things in it. The escape ladder is very important, again, because this child has to be able to get out if they're on a higher floor. If they're on the first floor, even that might be high, depending on the age of the child. And so one of the things you want to do is you want to practice that. You want to get a ladder. Make sure your child is not afraid of heights. Have them scale and come down a ladder multiple times so that they know and they're comfortable doing it. Every protocol that you put in place, practice it with them. Don't wait to that day. Create scenarios and situations where you can act it out so that it's second nature. You want it to be as second nature as possible because, again, children experience stress. They get into situations where it's like, oh, what's going on? Or they might be concerned about your health and your well-being. No, my mom, my dad's out there fighting. You have to be able to explain to your child ahead of time. You don't come out the room and fight for me. You don't come out this room for nothing. Matter of fact, you come out that room, I'm going to beat your butt. I need you to get out the window and go to grandma's house. You let me take care of me, right? Like, you have to prep your child for that. Like dad got himself, mom got herself. I need you to not worry about me and take care of yourself. If there's multiple children there, one of your children has to be the leader. You have to train one of your children to be the leader. One person makes the decisions. That child has to be equipped, and it might not be the oldest. It should be the oldest, but there's scenarios where the oldest child is not always the most equipped, I would say. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you have to, if you have multiple children, equip one of them to take charge.
Yes.
And you train them in that way. And that child gets a different specific training outside of the view of the other ones. Listen, something happens and it's a stern thing. It's no sugar, it's no plain. You know, there's a time when you introduce them plain, but there's a time you have to look at them with a stern face. Listen, if something happens, this is up to you. Mm-hmm. I need you to take your brother and your sister and get out of the house. I need you to make sure they get to point A from point A to point B. You know, so another thing I'm gonna add into that too, that, you know, it goes into the go bag in the home, but you have to have, you know, identification and currency. You have to have some kind of physical currency that can be used for trade, potential trade, and then you have to have some form of identification. Identification is an extremely tricky one.
Yeah, I was
depending
gonna say.
on depending on the situation and circumstances, identification is important. What's always important, but how you deploy it and where you keep it in the meantime is extremely important, because there are times where you're going to want to be identified, and there are other times where you might not want to be identified. That might be for another live, though.
Yeah, hey, y'all gonna have to go to his page and follow him and take his classes. I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah. So just without going into it, really, just to put emphasis on why that's important. In a natural disaster, FEMA, you know, Federal Emergency Management Agency, their job is to provide assistance in case of, you know, large-scale disasters. Now, I'm not a FEMA representative, nothing like that, and we all know the reality that they don't always come through like they should. But the reality is that they do exist and they have resources. So if it's a natural disaster situation and your home has been compromised or your belongings have been compromised, then your identification is not just the ID, it's the deed to your house, it's your will, it's your insurance policies, all the different things that you're going to need to know. These are my assets. I have the deed, I have the note, I have this, I have that to prove that this is my stuff. Because your house could be destroyed in an incident, right? Also, picture IDs, because you have to be able to say, no, I lived at so-and-so address, so they know, okay, he was in the danger zone, this person needs resources, right? Because they're not just handing resources out. You got to be able to prove that you was affected, because anybody can walk up to FEMA camp and say, no, whatever, and try to get, yep, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to add to what you were saying about the address and stuff. It's also important for your child to know their home address and their phone number too, just in case.
Exactly. And then also have that stuff written down for them on a notepad or something so they know where they can refer to in case they're not able to recall it in the situation or circumstance. Now, the other thing is, outside of just a picture ID, you need to have family photo. It's extremely important. You have to be able to identify that those children are yours. Everybody's child don't look like them. Every daughter does not look like her mother. Every son does not look like their father.
I never thought of that either. That's a good point. I would never have thought that either. So
you know what happened at the border situation? A lot of families separated from their children. Now just think about yourself. Now, I'm gonna put myself in a scenario. I'm walking down the street. I see a child look like that child is lost, and I'm not a sick, perverted person, whatever. So I'm not gonna leave that child there if I don't see nobody. I'm gonna wait for that child. I'm gonna ask him, But say there's a parent somewhere in there and they do come around, and some guy or some woman, I don't care if it's a woman, she comes around and she says, "Oh, my baby, da da da." Hold on, ma'am. How do I know this your child?
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I'm not releasing nobody's child just anybody's hand, and the person should be able to appreciate that. They might not. They might get hostile, but you have to be willing to explain, listen, man, I'm not willing to release your child, if this is your child, into just any stranger's hands. Why? Because men and women are involved in sex rings. Men and women are involved in human trafficking. You don't know.
And that's a common rule even for childcare. Ma'am, sir, you need some identification. I am not allowed to release the child to nobody. Who I don't know. You're not on the emergency pickup list, so nothing. Exactly. And another telltale sign, if it's something wrong, that child may not even go to that person, right? And then if that's an abusive parent or something like that, they may not want to go to that. You sometimes, even though it is the parent, you could be releasing them into an abusive situation. So you also have to be able to read that child, that body language and those mannerisms. And you spend enough time. I mean, your scenario is a child off the street, but those situations happen. You can know body language from a child. If they like, I'm not about to release this child. But even if child when I'm in I'm in the center and I'm working with them every day, and this is not how they typically act when somebody who loves them come and pick them up, I'm questioning everything. I'm not releasing until I'm 1,000% sure. And so that was a really good point. Exactly.
So to help that situation, you'd have an ID photo. No, that's my son. Because everybody, my child, if I try to deny my child, they probably lock me up for trying to deny him. He's my twin. So I couldn't do it, right? But I would still, I have photos on my phone to show them that's my son, you know what I mean? So that's something you have to consider as well, having that form of identification, again, your deeds and all that kind of stuff that prove this is your home. That being said, you want to have multiples of everything. You want to, because you talk about being in a tornado, hurricane, flood environment. So if you live in a flood zone, you might want to think about getting certain documents copied and laminated to protect it against water damage, right? A fireproof safe to protect against fire. The whole house might burn down, but that safe is designed to protect whatever's inside from the flames. And then you protect those documents, but you also want to have documents in other places. You want to have a copy of something. You might want to do your originals maybe somewhere like a safety deposit box, right? Mm-hmm. And then have copies at home, have a copy in your vehicle, have a copy at your office, have a copy in your go bag. And it might sound crazy. We have copies everywhere because you don't know where you're going to be when something jumps off. There's plenty of stories of people who are at work when their house burns down. They found out their house burnt down on the news. Like, look it up. It happens. Sitting at home and they
Happened to
heard,
me
your
when I
house
was
burned on the
younger.
west side. On the west side, I live on the west
Yep.
side. Kind of find out it was their home.
Yep.
Like, and then all your stuff was at home.
Yep.
So,
And that's a true statement, because that happened. Our house burned down when we was younger, and thank
see,
God
I didn't
none
know
of
that.
me or my siblings were in the house, but my dad wasn't there either. And the house caught fire because too many plugs plugged up, and a lot of stuff was gone. So that's absolutely 1,000%. Y'all better believe this. You better
I didn't
believe
even know
it.
that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, so there's a lot. What else? In the home, everyone in your home, including your children, should have some degree of self-defense training. At bare minimum, how to prevent somebody from choking and
Yes.
or, being able to put you in this kind of hold. How do you escape a hold or a choke maneuver or something like that? That's key. You want your child to understand how to inflict pain. Don't keep your children soft and so even the girls. You want them
Yes.
to be able to identify a friend or a foe and know when to engage. That's important because you might be something might happen to you. You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
They might be after you. Listen, how many 64-something thousand black women was missing recently a few years ago? That number we know is not inflated, deflated. But that was just women. Children,
Yeah.
men go missing, and sometimes the child is the target. They'll take you out to go for the child, or that child needs to know what to do if you're not able to defend them, right? And so training your children, on basic defense techniques, and just in general, how to compose themselves and act in any given type of emergency situation. So those are some of the things you want to do to prepare your children, in your home, and yourself. Preparing your mind as a parent, understanding that you're oh man, this is sad. I think it was a couple weeks ago. I think it was Atlanta. I might be mistaken, and I'll look. I should post it on my page. A fire happened. I believe it was in Atlanta, and a whole family of people escaped this fire except one child.
Oh man.
The whole family got out the house except one child. And in my mind, I'm like, wow, I don't know the exact situation. Circumstances. I can't put myself in someone else's shoes when it happens. It's never happened to me, so I can't say, oh, I'm gonna da 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 da. But the reality is, you have to prepare your mind to be a sacrifice as a parent, because that child can't defend, might not be able to defend themselves in a situation circumstance. Where you put your child in the home. Your children shouldn't be upstairs in the upstairs bedroom, the furthest away from the exit in the first place. Your child should be in a location that is more suited for them to be able to get to an exit. They should know words like egress and entrance. They should know about locking windows and stuff like that, and how to work those different mechanisms and stuff. There are safety bars and things you put on windows and stuff like that for children of a certain age. But once you have children, they get over 5 or 6. Well, it depends. Some children fall out of windows at that age as well. But as they get older and you're preparing them, there's a time when you have to get away from that, because people have been locked in a home and couldn't get out. You know what I mean? So I don't know exactly what happened there, but parents, older children, everybody got out the house, and the child died. In my mind, I don't see how that happened. You know what I mean? Somebody should have known. Like you said, you have a checklist. And I know exactly what you meant when somebody had a clipboard, because you have to be able to say,
you gotta sweep. You gotta sweep
because
every room.
you're thinking, oh my God, you missed that one child, home alone.
We
They
have
had
to
so many children in the house.
the room before we leave, like especially if you got a lot of kids in the classroom. You have to sweep that classroom. You have to make sure that every child is out that building.
You have to lay eyes on them before you can check them off the list.
Yes, you have to, and it's very important. And if we take some of these mechanisms that we practice at work or at school and we bring them to the home, we'll be more prepared. Like I have a friend whose biggest fear is their child choking. Well, go take a first aid class. Go take that class where you learn how to do the Heimlich or CPR. In some places it's free. So if you to subside these fears that you may have with your children, the best thing you should do is to prepare for it,
Right.
and put this stuff into practice and use these structures and routines that you should be having with your child already anyway. I preach on that all the time. If y'all, check out my YouTube channel, Droppin Gems, I preach on all this stuff, communication and routine and practices and all that stuff all the time that parents need to know. Because sometimes we just don't know.
It's true. And so that's key. That's something I teach in my course as well, is getting trained. You're right, because one of the things that is always going to be a factor in any emergency situation is time.
Yeah.
And to go specifically what you're talking about with CPR, which is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, you have to understand that the amount of time that a person is deprived of oxygen or oxygen to the brain is going to have a severe impact on that person's ability to recover. The amount of time it takes for a person who is bleeding profusely to get that blood to stop flowing or losing that blood is going to be a huge impact. One of the biggest ones they talk about is stroke. You have to get a person assistance immediately. And so what I tell people is, do you really want to sit there and look at your child unresponsive, whether it's due to breathing or some kind of cardio, because children have cardio events as well, and you're waiting for someone else to come to save your child when you could do CPR? You could give them an AED, or use the AED on them. When you could sew up that wound, when you could cauterize the wound, or put pressure and go into what they call compressions and rescue breathing, because they change the terminology every now and then.
They sure do.
They do. I've been so times. It's like they change the word. And I'm like, just tell people, give it to them straight, man.
Right.
All this, and there's reasons why they change it. I understand that too, but just understand it's all the same. You gotta know how to.
The Heimlich maneuver. Let's keep it. All right, y'all do the Heimlich maneuver. Everybody knows.
Exactly.
There's a belly button, all that stuff. Yeah, I get it. I got it.
So I tell them you got to know how to restore breathing. You have to know how to stop blood, and you have to remove obstruction from the airway.
Yes.
You got to understand those things. And so you go get that training. And you said another key thing. There's so many free resources. Yes. You could probably walk to the E.M.S. fire department and say, hey, do you guys do training? Sure, we'll do a training. They might just say, yeah, just to do it for free, just to get out of the station and do something. You never know. Yeah. Most cities and municipalities in their, if you go to your local government, or local city.gov, like it's boston.gov, or it might be atlanta.gov. I don't know what it is in other cities, right? You look and they'll have all of the different types of resources and training available to that area. That's important too. Why? Because depending on where you live, it's different. You don't prepare in Boston where we got snowstorms and stuff, like you said, Chicago, the same way you prepare in California. I'm not preparing for no wildfire. I'm preparing for 24 inches of snow. Completely different situation. They're not thinking about, below zero sleeping bags and they probably don't even know nothing about a North Face coat, the big bulky North Face coat. They just want them a nice little jacket and a hoodie. You go give somebody that live in California their whole life, ever the East Coast, one of those big old North Face jackets you over there. They're like, what the heck you doing? It was just a blanket.
Yeah, anybody from down south be like, oh, it's 50 degrees, it's too cold. You like, that's cold? What? Be negative 10 below,
Right, and don't add in the wind chill, right? It's a completely different situation.
You gotta prepare for frostbite and all that type of mechanisms where they preparing for sunburn and stuff like that.
Right, so, right. But the wildfires too, like they have to take seriously, respirators. Like, do they have a respirator where, in case, because those wildfires produce a lot of smoke, and you can't, smoke kills people more oftentimes before the flames do.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to put a percentage on it, but I know it's more than 50% definitely that you're going to die from the smoke inhalation before you do the flame. So if you have a sufficient enough respirator living in a place like California, now you need it everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of right. It's just a general thing now. But there's all kind of things depending on the area you live in, how you're also going to prepare. And so and I was saying that to say that your local city government, they're going to have stuff like that on their website.
Yeah.
And so you should always go to that website, and that's one of the places you should start. What resources do they have in the city for people to prepare themselves?
Yeah. And if you take a CPR or first aid class, they're gonna tell you that smoke is the number one cause for killing. So you get a towel, a wet towel. They teach you those mechanisms that you use to keep that rate down if smoke is everywhere. So
Right.
teach you that stuff. So I think it's very important for us to take this more serious. Um, even I know I'm aware of some hospitals that may make parents take CPR classes or things like that when they have a newborn. I think stuff like that should be implemented at every hospital. Let's teach them
Right.
some type of basics with this child, see
Right.
how to do CPR on an infant and stuff like that.
Right.
Because like you said, it may not be nobody around at times when this stuff is happening. You need to know what are the symptoms of a stroke. What happened
Right.
when the face go down and this, that, and the third, so that you could be better prepared to handle that situation and be able to stay calm while doing it. I will tell you right now, I can't stand a person at work that freak out in the case of emergency, especially while we working with children. I'm like, you gonna get everybody else scared. Like, you have to be able to remain calm. And that's one thing I like about how you talk. Like, you super duper calm. Like, it's just a calming voice, right? Well, me, in childcare, you have to be able to think quickly and be quick on your feet, but you have to keep control of the conversation. The situation, because you'll have a child screaming and hollering in a minute.
Right.
What are you going to do? Because you got to keep up with this child who's terrified and then control everybody else. So I want parents, as we kind of bring this to a close, to understand this, understand that it's very important. Everything that he said here was very important. I want everyone to sign up for his classes because it's so much detail and everything. Like when I was watching the one about what's the word? Famine? Not famine. Is it famine? Yeah, famine. Yeah. I was like, whoo! I was like, that what you're saying is true. Even the stuff that you were saying about the grocery store. Like, my dad taught me that a while ago, that they do that for low-name grocery stores, but now it might be a chance that they're going to be doing that for every grocery store. And if y'all want to know what I'm talking about, then you need to go to his page and look at it. But what I'm saying is those type of things do happen. And if you're used to this, some way, somehow, we are privileged with the way that we're living, and anything at any given moment could happen, and you have to be ready. People in your field or in my field or in law enforcement, they may be a little bit more prepared for certain situations because of the trainings we have to do all the time for our job. Right. But what if that's not you? You just work at an office. You ain't got to do nothing but type on a computer all day. You don't know what to do in the case of an emergency situation if a fire breaks out or if somebody chokes. It's up to you to prepare yourself and get the knowledge needed so that you can be properly prepared. So I wanted to know if anybody had any questions. I did see one question about the movie that I mentioned. So give me a second to find that answer for you, because I said I didn't know the name of the movie, but I'll
say something while you're looking. So no, I was gonna talk about something while you're looking for it, right? Okay. And so one of the other key things when you're dealing with the children, understand that children, because you was talking about there might be child screaming and this and all this kind of thing. Children will feed off of your energy, right?
Yes.
And so you want to always make sure that, understand the mind of a child. See, like I have a 7-year-old, and so when you're raising a child or rearing a child, you learn how children learn and what piques a child's interest and why the interest is piqued. And one of the things I learned is it's not necessarily what it is you're doing, it's the fact that you're doing it the child likes. So a child typically, if it's their parents at least, they want to do whatever the parents are doing. It's stuff that you might think is the most annoying, but who wants to wash dishes, right? Your son, your daughter might want to wash dishes. Why? Just because you're washing dishes. They want to sweep the floor because you're sweeping the floor. And parents would tell you real quick, if you deny that child to help sweep the floor or to do those dishes, they'll get angry. And they'll get upset.
So upset. Yes.
They'll shut down. What do they do?
Pow.
They don't want to deal with you no more.
Yeah.
And so to avoid that kind of situation and what it actually works out in your favor, include them in the plan.
Yes.
Oh, okay, baby, it's time to go. I need you to carry this bag. And so a child can have a go bag. And with the child, of course, they are carrying a 10-pound go bag, the same thing you might have, but they can carry gauze pads. They might just have the emergency first aid kit in that thing. Something like they can handle. They could have, their toy. They could have the map. It's light. They could have the compass, maybe, whatever other light stuff. I have a whole bunch of different things here because you want me to show some stuff that they can carry that's not going to put a lot of weight on their back, but now they feel included. Because if you don't, last thing you want is to be trying to navigate and negotiate your way through a high stress situation and your child is not cooperating.
Yes. And that's why implementation of structure and routine is very important. In those games, playing those games, that's why it's even more important. Yes, you're spot on.
Right. And so, get them engaged in that way, make them feel included and wanted in it. And then also, you was talking about, people in certain jobs and stuff not knowing this kind of stuff. Yeah, we got to break out of that mindset, family, because you might be the one that needs to save the day. You might be the person in the office that's closest to the fire extinguisher. You need to know how to use it. You don't throw the fire extinguisher at the fire. You gotta know you're trying to press the button, trying to push the trigger, and you ain't take the pin out of the thing. First step, right? You gotta know, pull that pin out, squeeze the trigger, aim it at the base of the flame, sweep it side to side, and don't let go of the trigger until the thing is empty or the flame has gone out. And even if the flame goes out, they tell you should still squeeze it. Just go into that container, it's empty, right? Yeah. Stop, drop, and roll. That's only going to get you so far. That's something I never understood in trainings and stuff that I've seen in schools, back in the day when I was younger, at least. I haven't been to school for a long time, so I don't know what they do now. But I don't ever remember hearing about fire blankets. I don't ever remember hearing about fire ladders. They talk about fire extinguishers and they say stop, drop, and roll. But fire ladders and the fire blankets and stuff like that, we need to know how to use those, how to deploy them. You should know where they're located. Yeah. You should know where the AED in your office is located, because you don't want to get into a situation and it goes further than it needs to, and then you look around, well, what happened? No one could find the AED. So Matt, you on the floor, you want everyone in the office to be able to respond to you, right, in a disaster situation if you were in need. So and so if everyone does unto others what they want done unto them, we'd all be good. So you learn it. You learn the system. And if someone doesn't know, then you're in a position to teach them. And maybe you might teach the person that saves your life. Yeah. You never know. So know that. Know what the evacuation plan is for the building you work in. Know it for your child's school. Know it for all of that kind of stuff. And how to operate these things. Go get you a course on CPR, first aid, first responder, and all that kind of thing. And take it seriously. Because again, it's a repetitive thing, but it's necessary. You don't know when, how, from where, from whom disaster is going to strike. And it's not always a natural disaster situation. School shootings, social outbreaks, all kind of stuff that we can go through.
Well, I know if the apocalypse really come out, where you stay at?
Yeah, I practice another thing called Operation Security.
I gotta go to what? Philly? Where you at?
I'm in Boston, but
Boston? Yes, you know how in The Walking Dead they be traveling to Atlanta and Texas, all these places. I'll be traveling to Boston. Nah, that's a big city. That's a city place too. We stay away from the city places according to the movies. I take all that stuff.
There's times when you want to stay away. There's times you might want to go there.
Yeah.
So I teach on all that in the course, but that's a whole nother topic.
So
Yes,
can you tell everybody how to reach you? If you have a website, even how to get involved in your courses, all of that.
so if you would like to tap in with me for my class, you can go to radioprepare.com. That's RADIOPREPARE, radioprepare.com, and sign up there. On IG, it's Daniel underscore KC1NCF. Also on Twitter, and then just Daniel KC1NCF on Facebook and YouTube. You know, tap in with me, family. I have so much to offer you. We're living in right now a change of season. See, we're going into that season of hurricanes, wildfires in California. COVID is a whole nother situation on its own where we don't know where this thing is going to go. We have no idea, family. And my thing is, not knowing is enough for you to prepare. You don't know what's going to happen. So guess what? Prepare. If you knew it was going to happen, then that means you could prepare. But the reality is that I always tell my students, the only time you can put on the scenario isn't in the past because it's gone already. Right now is a little bit too late because as soon as you say right now, that second's gone as well. Tomorrow, if you start to prepare, well, what if you die before tomorrow comes? You don't know. So now is the only word. It's the only time you can put on it. Now is the time to prepare, family. Take this seriously. I can go through so many scenarios and situations where people, one little thing could have changed. Let me give one real quick.
Okay,
because
I stay on here all
reality.
day.
Current events, right? We look at what happened in Texas recently, and again, I live in Boston, Massachusetts. Cold climate, crazy weather.
Yeah.
And some things for us, it's just like every day. We spend more time in the winter than we do in the summertime. And so it gets below 30 degrees, and guess what? We already know. Turn the heat up to a certain temperature to prevent your pipes from bursting. And also you might turn the faucet on a little bit so that the water will run and prevent it from freezing. But one of the biggest and most widespread incidents that happened in Texas was people's pipes bursting because they didn't know how to prevent it from happening. They didn't know that all they had to do is turn the heat up. But once that pipe busts, that kind of damages, like water damage is crazy. And pipes bursting in ceilings, that's not an easy fix. It's not a cheap fix. So something
but a lot of them had their electric off too, and that caused pipes to bust as well.
Right. That's why I said to turn in the water on, so I know you might not be able to turn the heat up, but if you keep the faucet on, the running water will prevent it from freezing. So we know that kind of thing in Boston. We've experienced the cold and power outages at the same time. Also, so that's one thing. Also, they suffered a grid down situation because Texas has its own grid. So people could not use their phones because the towers were down. People didn't have lights. They showed the images where people in the residential areas were without power, but then downtown they had power. They were turning it off, turning it on. All kind of stuff was going on there, right? And then the other one, the most tragic part about it, at least 2 children, separate situations, lost their life of, hypothermia, froze to death. And something as simple as these little Mylar blankets, emergency blanket. This thing is 82 by 52 inches. It can cover my entire body. But this is what you see them give to racers at the end of marathons, which are typically run early in the morning where it's cold. It's reflective. It's going to reflect the heat of your body back to you. And so it's designed that in cooler temperatures, you're able to retain your body temperature a little bit better. So having one of these in the house would have saved one of those children where the heat was off and they didn't know what to do. Having it's an emergency thing. It's just something that's lightweight. It's a little plastic thing. This little thing would have saved those children's lives, right? Or potentially, I should say. But little stuff like that in Texas, they were shut down for what? A few inches of snow. In Boston, we would have been like, dang, it didn't snow today.
Right. You got to be dang on snowed in Chicago to be like, we're going to shut the city of school down, school, everything. You still got to go to school.
Exactly. 1 inch of snow shut Atlanta down.
Yeah.
So don't think that something like that won't happen to you, because it wasn't the first time it happened to Texas, but they didn't take the warning, and then it happens again in 2021. You know what I mean? Like you have to have that mindset that no, it can come your way. So I talked about a little earlier, well, we're not worried about wildfires, but fire still happens in Boston, right? So I can't think that a tornado or hurricane might not happen here. So we prepare for anything we know we could prepare for. So.
All
Oh,
valuable
little
information.
monsters. Okay, I'm gonna check that
Little
out.
monsters, yeah. All valuable information, people. We definitely dropping gems on y'all today. And he
Praise
gave
be to
y'all some
God.
extra gems. You feel me? But if you want even more, you gotta go follow him at Daniel_KC1NCF. And he has his radio preparedness. What say the website again?
I just put it in the comment section.
Okay, great.
Radioprepare.com.
Yes, go check him out. Go follow him. You can follow me here at Miss J every day. I have a Droppin' Gems YouTube page, and I also have a Droppin' Gems Facebook page. And I am going to be bringing you guys more valuable information from very valuable people. We are shedding a little light just to help y'all shine. And I want y'all to take this seriously.
Yes.
Okay? Please do. Please do. And thank you guys. Thank you so much, Daniel. I had a lot of fun.
Praise
This
be to
is
God.
really good. I really appreciate you. Y'all should see me try to correlate this one day. I was delirious. I read those comments the next day. I was like, I definitely was sleepy because this is just common sense right now.
Yes, ma'am.
So yeah, it was really good, and I am very grateful that you came on to talk to other people, more people about this situation, and I thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Awesome platform. Keep dropping gems on the people because this is exactly what we need. We ain't waiting for no one else, no benevolent, nobody to come and save us. We save ourselves. So this is
Yes.
a good platform. Keep it up.
Thank you. You guys have a good day. Talk to you later.
Peace, family.
Bye. And video.